Well, Bunky, Gregg, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today, and we're here 10 years later. As you said just a moment ago, it doesn't seem like 10 years.
It really. Well, thank you for the opportunity to come speak, Joy. You know, like you said, it doesn't seem like 10 years, but it's always good to remember what happened, honor those that happened, and prepare for the future.
Absolutely.
Good to have you back in town.
Well, thank you. When you think about 10 years and maybe go back to that day, Bunky, there were tornado warnings all day. Was there something, and there was already damage in the county from that morning, was there something different about this storm that you kind of had a feeling about?
We really did. We had been in discussions with the National Weather Service in Memphis throughout the week. We knew it was going to be one of those once-in-a-lifetime, quote, events, that conditions were going to be so right for multi-tornado, multi-long-track tornadoes. And it happened. It's, you see that Toricon level go up, you see that high risk level go up, and you become on the edge. So you knew it was that day, and like I mentioned, they started early that morning. We actually had a tornado come through the county early that morning. It started in East Webster School and through Chickasaw County, and again up into Monroe County. Some damage in Loren, and actually small damage here in Smithville. It wasn't nearly amount, but then it was consistently warning after warning, and with the radio systems we had, we were able to monitor other traffic going on throughout the state and kind of monitor conditions going on, and you knew that was all coming up toward us eventually. So yeah.
And Gregg, you were at City Hall, and you know down to the minute when the tornado hit. Kind of take me back to the moments before you hid under the boardroom table.
Well, all during the day prior to the actual, when it hit, I was at my full-time job in Amory, and we'd been in and out of our safe places on and off all day because the warning sirens going off. And you could tell it was different because of the concrete floors sweating. Your concrete block walls in the factory was sweating. You could tell it was the humidity, the atmosphere was primed. And when I left that job at 3 o'clock, I got a call that we had a bad storm coming out of the southwest, headed toward Wren, and headed up toward our way. And I went straight to town hall and was monitoring what was going on, and I dispatched our police chief down to the lock. And before he got there, he hollered back on the radio to town hall, "Take cover, it's on the way." And at that time, I locked the front door of City Hall, and me and the two clerks in the City Hall got under the boardroom table at that moment.
Is there any way to describe surviving that EF5?
Of course, there's a lot of prayers going on under that table. Me and the town clerks we was asking for safety, and the thing that I remember most was the sound and the ground shaking, because we was laying on the carpet on a slab floor. You could feel the slab moving, and just the enormous pressure that was on your ears. And like I say, it didn't last that long either. It was just, I've said it back earlier, 10 seconds it seemed like it was over with. And then when you climb out, you don't see nothing but debris. And,
How held high? You probably had to climb out from underneath the rocks and the bricks.
Well, insulation, metal panels, stuff like that was in the way. And like I say, and Bunky can tell you, I wasn't in the best condition right after that.
Well, none of us were, Gregg.
There wasn't none of us in too good of conditions after that. Not physically, but just, what in the world just happened.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Bunky, I feel like that had to be a helpless feeling. Thinking back, knowing this monster was destroying a town that you loved and possibly people that you loved.
It was, and we mentioned the earlier tornado, but there's something else happened that people forget about, is that at the same time we're setting the warnings off in Smithville tornado, we lost power in the county. The TVA power grid was damaged in Alabama. And so we were totally without power in the county. It was power outage not associated with what's happening here at Smithville and Ren. It was something totally different, and people don't realize that. In Amory and Aberdeen, all over the county, we had the closest neighbors to us had power was in Columbus and Nettleton, Fulton.
That's right.
But you're right, it was helpless. You hear the reports and stuff coming in, and actually, we were the 911 director also, and the calls started coming in, and my deputy director, she at the time, every phone available, calls were coming into it. We have it was a joke, we have a phone in the restroom for a dispatcher to use, and that line was even ringing. So it was just it felt just helpless, but I had training. I was new at the job, less than 2 years at EMA, but I had training. I've been a responder for years, and both fire and EMS, and I received a lot of training. I had a little wake-up call, so you just got to pull things together and get a hold of yourself and do what you're trained to do, and that's act and respond.
And I'll talk to you a little bit about that training and that response. I remember coming into town, and I told you I kind of looked back around, and I ended up at that command center down there. I think it was off Industrial Street or right there by that water tower.
Right.
And I remember they'd already gotten the camper up there.
Yeah.
I think you had a mobile command center.
We had two. We had one set at Ren and had another one set up at Smithville.
And it was one of the most horrific scenes I've ever witnessed. It took me a while too, I'm not gonna lie. It seemed like organized chaos.
That's a good description
Good
for
description.
it. And that's all you can do in the early moments. You try to just grab a hold of what's happening and try to get organized, because you don't want to duplicate your services when you want to make sure everybody's accounted for, because at the same time we still had active gas lines. They were still gas due in the town, and you maintain the safety of the people involved, also responders, and people get tunnel vision sometimes, and because they want to help. That's that natural instinct wanting to help, but you gotta watch those things and make sure nobody else gets hurt during the incident and everything.
Oh yeah, it was extremely raw. Gregg, I guess as a mayor, and you're looking at this, and again, people you've grown up with, you love, you've seen their lives kind of destroyed. What is going through your mind first thing when you think about your town? What is the first aspect, or the first, this is what I gotta do?
Well, when we come out of City Hall, it was eerie, just quiet. And you could hear people screaming. In the landscape, you could hear just people screaming. And like I say, I remember I had a flip phone then. And I was trying to call through to 911. And I did get through. Get help. It's gone. And, at that time, I really didn't know where to start until I seen some of Dr. Monroe and his staff come running through the debris down Highway 25. And I knew then it's time to jump in action. And the first thing we'd do is create a emergency triage center, which we used our public water office to do it with, and just coordinate that. Had to have a temporary morgue, find a place for a temporary morgue that was suitable to have a temporary morgue. We done that, and like I say, as the evening wore on and nightfall fell, the shock set in more of actually what has happened to our town. What has happened to our town, that the big oak trees used to hang over the highway. You knew everybody. You already knew that you had casualties that had already been found, and you knew who they were. And, it started a total change in my life that very second. And it was up to me to see how to move forward with it.
I remember, Mr. Gregg, that when I made to Smithville, I found Gregg, and he was in our command session. Remember this conversation? I guess I was shell-shocked, and I just stood up, put my arms around him. And I said, Gregg, I didn't call him, I called him Gregg, he was a friend.
Yeah.
I said, Gregg, we're in this together, we're gonna get through this, and we're brothers. And we prayed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I remember that just very, very clearly. And nobody in that camper but me and him at that time.
Yeah.
So,
Is that stayed today?
sir.
Is that bond, y'all still have that?
Yeah, I don't see Mayor as much, but he knows if he ever needs anything,
Oh yeah.
he can call me.
You know, we don't see each other. I've gone a different way, and still live here,
but the bond is still there.
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
it always will
absolutely.
be.
It always will be. You know, like the two clerks that I was under the table with. It always will be.
You talked about the doctor and the nursing staff, and there's probably a lot of unsung heroes that nobody knows their name, nobody remembers their face or heard of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Either one of you, can you, or maybe you start with that, Bunky. Does anything come to mind whenever you talk about those unsung heroes that maybe not everyone remembers or knows?
I'll start with the volunteers or our search and rescue team. Those guys, you never think about those guys. Those guys are all volunteer, and they came out and helped. And they're the ones that actually started the command post set up.
Right.
They were one of the leaders of that group. He was very technology driven, and he understood everything that happened. So he was one of the driving forces behind the development of the search and rescue team. And so they were here, and they knew what was going on, and some of the people they had working with them, and that was one of the biggest. Two members of that, and one guy was a communication specialist, and he really helped a lot, and so
Getting those resources.
Yeah.
and a lot of another thing you said. I don't know the names. I can't remember the names, but people open their doors to strangers, and everybody knows each other at Smithville, but people come outside to help, just to help take care of people. The people that feedings and stuff like that. Just show up. You didn't ask them to show up. They just came in. And stuff, so.
And what about you, Gregg?
Right after the tornado, there were so many people who were, at the time, were searching for loved ones, and people were searching for that knew who was missing, but had no connection with them. But they were out there in the field, debris field, searching and looking, and they were bringing victims up to the triage center on four-wheelers, on bed doors, wrapped in shower curtains and things like that, and just to try to get them to medical attention. And that was right after the storm, and there are so many people who helped in that aspect. It's hard to keep up with actually who was doing what, but as you sit back and think about it at that day, you can pretty well name the people who jumped in there.
I'll tell you, when I walked up to that command post, I remember I saw a couple stretchers at first, and then the doors came.
Yeah.
And people were coming in on doors.
See, we talked earlier about said, well, I was old to I couldn't make cell phone calls from mine. I actually went to Ren first, and I think God told me to go to Ren first because, like I said, we had no cell phone coverage, and I was able to get on my radio in my vehicle, and I contact Lee County Communications, which I knew those guys up there, and on a common state net, and they were listening, and they were able to patch me through to the North Mississippi Medical Center in Tupelo, in which that is the regional trauma center, and also the Tupelo Fire Department, which are local technical rescue people. And I was able to do that based on my experience, my connections with them, and they actually activated the code green at the hospital in Tupelo based on my initial report. I didn't make the Smithville yet, I just knew it was bad. And our local EMS providers, he had a 100% callback with his employees. All his off-duties that were lived here came into work.
Wow. All hands on deck.
All hands on deck.
Let me ask you, whenever you rode into town, was anything going through your mind like the post office is gone, City Hall is gone? Like, did you do a mental checklist of buildings that you knew were there but were gone?
I knew they were gone, just listening to the radio traffic coming in, but I didn't expect to see total devastation like I did. No. I knew the command post was set up at the fire department, City Works areas like that, but at first, no. First thing I noticed, like when you come into town, you see the power lines down, and the pines were down on the ground across the highway where responders had actually had to start cutting their way into town coming from the south, and you see the debris piles, or just not debris, just pushed out enough, and the lines didn't come in, and things like Mills Diner, it was gone, and the post office, and it just all gone. But it was so many people just trying to help. You had to work your way through it and get to your command post and check in with everything and see what's being done already and what you need to act on and stuff, and reassure those guys as help's coming.
Did you do that? Did you kind of go at any point, or was it too much to take in to be able to say, oh my gosh, Mills is gone, or
well, that came the day after. We had to, right after, we had to stay over at where the not the EOC, but the trailer was at the water plant there, and monitor search and rescue. Mm-hmm. And what was it, 3 days till after the storm, 3 days till we finally had everybody accounted for. Mm-hmm. And it hit on a Wednesday, and like I say, it was Saturday afternoon till the following Saturday mm-hmm. afternoon till we had everybody accounted for.
Yeah, the last person we were looking for, we actually found him in Calhoun County.
That's right.
He was a non-English speaking person living here, and he had made his way to family in Calhoun County, and we didn't know about it.
We didn't know about it, and all that resources and everything that we put forward was looking, mm-hmm. and we didn't know he was in Calhoun County.
Wow.
And but it wasn't until the day after that it dawned on me, when I was on the south end of town, of the homes, the businesses, everything that was just gone, and all the landmarks.
Yeah, that's a good point. The landmarks.
I could close my eyes before the tornado, and I can about tell you, going down Highway 25 South, and not look at the road and look at what tree is there where a side street is. Mm-hmm. They're gone. And it was hard to identify where streets were. With your landmarks gone.
I bet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially when it's been there your whole life,
Absolutely.
I moved into Monroe County, but like I said, I was up here many times, and I had family and friends here, and so
And,
this is kind of.
In my case, I rode them roads as a youngster mm-hmm. on a bicycle. Knew every one of them, and just the landmarks being gone, I get lost mm-hmm. of exactly where you're supposed to be.
I could see that.
You could, you really could, and that was a big problem.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the unsung heroes. Like I said, it was a total team effort. I mean, the people at the hospital in Amory, they came in, and the Gilmore Foundation opened their doors up as a reunification center, and mm-hmm. It was nobody alone. Smithville was not on their own. It's from everything. It was the whole community. All of Monroe County was with Smithville. I mentioned this during our first town hall meeting. I said, we're all Seminoles. We're in this together. That there's not Seminole, not a Panther. We're all together as one.
And that was one of the I had to hold back the tears moments. It was when we, a week following the storm, we had to get the kids back in school. Mr. Cantrell, the superintendent then, we had to do something, and Mr. O'Brien had to get the kids back in school to finish up the school year. And one of the heartbreaking but yet rejoiced moments is when you have part of your students going over to Hatley which is always a battle, you might say. But when you pull up and there's a big banner across their fence that says we're all Seminoles now. And you know, there at Meadowwood Baptist Church in Amory, that's where our kindergartners and first and second grades, that church opened their doors for our kids to finish school.
The cafeteria.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
You know, and disasters today, you don't see that. You're on your own in a lot of cases, where your other communities open up their facilities for your kids to finish the school year without missing, you know, any days. And you know, that was one of the just uplifting moments of the whole deal.
And as we're still in the searching aspect, but we had signed a liaison with the local nursing homes. I'm sorry, with the funeral homes. I'm sorry about that blunder, but we wanted to show respect to those people because the cemetery was damaged.
Yeah.
And that's when we was able to go ahead and start cleaning up. That's the first area we went, was the cemetery, to try to clean the cemetery up. We knew it was people, they were fallen, dead, and they needed to be buried. And we want to show them respect, and so the liaison told us whenever the procession was leaving the funeral homes.
That's right.
And at that point, all activity stopped. All recovery, all cleanup, every activity, and everybody went to the highway just to show respect for the people coming in.
Even your FEMA folks that was here in town, if we had a funeral procession leaving Amory coming to Smithville to the cemetery, work stopped. You line the roads, you show respect.
I remember reporting out in front of City Hall and seeing funeral processions going by, and everybody went to the street. And I don't ever remember anybody saying it out loud. They just did it.
Yeah. It's a touching moment.
You grew up here. You thought you knew the people of Smithville. What did they teach you through this?
Don't forget where I come from. Yeah. Even though, you know, when all your long-term recovery teams from FEMA, MEMA, all your federal agencies, you know, we had 5 of the president's cabinet here going through. Even though all this bunch is here, don't forget where you come from.
Yeah.
Don't forget who you are. And you know, we had a lot of things that the local community didn't understand we had to do to stay in compliant with all your federal guidelines in order for us to seek our reimbursement as far as damages and do our part. And when volunteers come in, we had to have people that was set up out here at the was the EOC that we set up right out here.
At the baseball field first.
Yeah.
Right here, here.
Yeah,
Right here
in the parking lot. You know, people who registered, volunteers coming in, we had to register them folks. We had to write down what they were going to use as far as rakes, shovel, because you know the federal government's has got an hourly rate on that equipment. You know, if they bring in tractors or if they bring in chainsaws, we need to document that. But as always, don't forget where you come from. And that's it. That's the reason I'm still here today.
Oh, man.
What did they teach you?
From my upbringing, I've always been around a responder type family. And my family's very involved in my hometown of Houston, and still they are. And so just the way you're brought up, I grew up in it. And their responsibility, taking care of people, have compassion, taking care of people. And then as I started emergency management degree, the career is, they teach you that every disaster starts local and ends local. And don't forget that. As Gregg mentioned, we had several members of the President's Cabinet come in, and one of those was Secretary of Homeland Security Napolitano. Right. Well, the day they came in is the day that the Navy SEALs took out Osama bin Laden. So we knew something was going on there, of course, and it's like that. But I had the FEMA administrator, Craig Fugate. He pulled me aside and talked to me about 5 or 10 minutes, and he just told me that we were doing a great job, that we had a lot of eyes on the nation were on us, and just keep doing what we're doing, and it meant a lot. First of all, he didn't call me Mr. Goza, he didn't call me Bunky, and that means a lot. So he took me to Bunky, so just the compassion and taking care of people. That's the most. Don't never forget that. It's a face behind every disaster and every victim, and we call them survivor.
And the rebuilding, did you see kind of a spirit within the community that said, this ain't gonna keep us down?
Well, I did, but what we had to realize was a lot of people who lost their homes were elderly, and a lot of them wasn't going to rebuild. In later in life, and they didn't want to do that, and I completely understand that. And what you see was the younger, I'm not, at the time who had a family and everything, they really have rebuilt, but a lot of your elderly people chose not to rebuild, and that's when we looked at it closely and realized that some of them went to nursing homes, assisted living, and things like that, or rental properties somewhere, and there's nothing you can do about that, and you just have to take that with whatever. And try to do what's best for the town and move on.
Mm-hmm. As mentioned, one of the things that we talked about more the city, but you have to have realistic expectations how you want to rebuild. And some things you might say you want this to happen, but and like one of the biggest things, I remember everybody wanted a Walmart here in Smithville. Well, things you might say you want this to happen, but and like one of the biggest things, I remember everybody wanted a Walmart here in Smithville. Well, that's before the neighborhood market started. I mean, that's going to be a stretch to get a Walmart to come to Smithville, because just geographically located between two big ones in Amory and Smithville and stuff.
And that was, you mentioned briefly the plan, and y'all worked real hard on that, and it was probably difficult coming to some sort of fruition to that. Talk to me about that a little bit.
When FEMA moves in, they bring in what they call a long-term recovery committee. And these are people who specialize in communities recovering. And at first, sat down talking with them and actually looking at them, and there were a lot of people involved in this. And FEMA involved a lot of people. We had the architect school out of Mississippi State involved in a lot of planning. And just, they brought in resources to do this, and you had to filter through a lot of it and know what your community actually needs. I can remember sitting in planning committees on in late at night, discussing and arguing and whatever it was, just to come to an agreement of which way to proceed. And and that's a part of it. That is a part of it. And you just have to look forward and try to figure out which way you want to go and how you want to go about it. I can remember sitting in one, and one of the long-term recovery committees, she was a doctor out of Virginia, and she says, Mayor, it's going to take you 10 years. I said, no, ma'am, it won't take 2. And she said, no. You write it down. It'll take 10 years. And, I should have listened to her, because she's basically right. She's been doing it a lot. She's been doing this before. This ain't her first rodeo, and it was mine, and just things like that. And then, during that process, we learned about resilient buildings. We learned about codes. We never had them. We learned about them real quick, and you know, and what to look for in the future. And we hope that that has panned out, and to move forward with that, you know. Right now, you know, I had a fellow here in town tell me last weekend, he said, you know, if I had to build a new house today, I'd make sure it had hurricane strapping on it. I said, I completely understand that, you know. Me too, you know. And so, you know, we learned a lot. We learned a lot.
You see what happened, and you want to try to find methods or technology or equipment to make things lessen impact on future disasters. And based on my after-action report, we had a communications problem. And it was two aspects of it. We lost the, you know, I mentioned the power outage, whatever. We lost communications with the county, with the leader. So one thing that we worked on, and had a great board to work with and county administrator at that time. And what we did was we switched over to the Midwind system. We just totally redid our communication systems, and with additional capability for the mobile command units. And at the same time we did that, we worked on our outdoor warning system. I want to emphasize this, Joe. We know, we mentioned the sirens going off. You know, the outdoor warning sirens are strictly meant for an outdoor. They're not designed for in-house use. You know, they are great to have. They're a great tool in the toolbox. But you need the multiple ways to receive the information, nor where the radios or the devices, the code red system that Three Rivers graciously provided for Monroe County, everybody in their division, in their district. But mitigation funding, and we worked on that, is to improve our communications in the county, and I think we're successful in doing that.
People don't realize how important that is.
Yeah.
So very important.
And you talk about mitigation. Look what we're sitting in
Yeah.
today. This is a
the second part
mitigation
of it.
factor right here.
It was, they did something very, very unusual. FEMA and MEMA is they are actually awarded safe rooms to every resident in the disaster home, and there are a lot more homes had storm shelters placed after tornado than they had before that, whether it be outdoor freestanding ones. And that continues even today as people, and that's what we want to happen. We want to be a safe place to go as new home construction happens. You know, the mayor mentioned people have strapping. Well, people actually incorporating a safe room within their building or structure they're constructing or renovating their homes to include a safe room, so they'll have to get outside. Just literally walk into a closet. It's hardened for a safe room capability.
I don't know if you or anybody else really wants, and maybe you do, I don't know, it's really a question. Do you think this town, moving forward, what do you want to see for it? Should it be defined by that EF5 monster?
I'm going to say the resiliency of the people who survived it, and the people who continue to live here and see the town move forward. You know, so many people have, in the past 10 years, that was involved there, have passed on. You know, just in a short 10 years, and to keep them folks' legacy alive, and to keep their spirit community, being a part of our community, of this community, and continue to strive to move forward.
Well, I kind of echo what it's the people. The people make people the heart of the community, and the resiliency, and the people want to live here. They love it here. They grew up here. They want to continue living here and stuff. So I think it's the resiliency, the remembrance of what happened, the things, pretty much things happened as a result of that, like we have the dome here, the school, but yeah, I don't think it'd be defined as a tornado, but just remembrance and defined as the people want to stay here, to come back.
And you fully believe that the steps y'all made will help the future of Smithville 10 years, right?
Yeah, I do.
I do. I agree. Yeah. I tell you, it was some very hard decisions that had to be made. And you know,
there was actually a discussion one time of dissolving the charter, doing away with the police department. You know, I wouldn't have no part of that. And to me, that was throwing in the towel. You know,
And like I said, you mentioned people don't understand the things that had to happen, the introduction of building codes to get, we had to have those in fact to get kind of federal funding.
That's right.
And people didn't understand, you had to explain to people, we've got to do this. We're not trying to keep you out of Smithville. We're trying to help you to help get the funding available, and people didn't understand that. And so that's kind of stuff that happens, and it's a process. It's not, again, it's snap your fingers and everything be well. That happens on TV, but not the real world and stuff.
You're right about that. Well, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time. It was a good talk.
Good deal.
And good to see you both.